Glory to God. And we got a crazy one for y'all today, fellas. What up, YouTube? It's... Nah. Nah. Nah, that wasn't enough energy, chat. That wasn't that. You feel me? You feel me? Hold on. Let me get right. What up, YouTube? It's enemy part 2, not part 1. Bout it. Dang. Bout another video, man. And today we got another crazy one for y'all today, fellas. Today we got Mr. Nightmare 7 disturbing cases of strangers living in the walls. Yeah, bro, he put that title on there like it was normal or something. Like, alright, bro. I ain't gonna lie. I don't got too much to say, bro. All glory to God. Let's see what this video talking about. This junk seems strange, to say the least.
In 1986, in the quiet town of Pepperell, Massachusetts.
Like, dang.
In 1986, in the quiet town of Pepperell, Massachusetts, the Bowen family moved into an old colonial house. Frank Bowen was raising his two daughters alone after the tragic loss of their mother. Tina was 16, and her younger sister Karen was just 9. They were a close-knit family trying to heal. Not long after moving in, strange things started happening around the house. It began with small stuff, tapping noises in the walls, lights turning on and off by themselves.
That's small to you? That's small to you? You hear, or in your walls like that? That's a very big issue to me. Maybe I'm tripping. Maybe the Bowen family got something. You feel me? I don't got some type of, I don't know, but shoot, that ain't small, bro. I'm thinking you talking about small stuff happening. Maybe the I don't know. What is small? Maybe just things get replaced. Maybe because that's not small neither. But like it can be a human doing that. But tapping in the walls though, nah.
Tapping noises in the walls.
Nah.
Lights turning on and off by themselves.
Nah.
And furniture appearing slightly out of place.
See,
the family dismissed it as the quirks of an old home.
Nah. Not the
Then
walls.
things escalated. One night, Tina and Karen attempted to use a Ouija board for fun.
Oh, yeah.
They laughed at first, but their faces dropped when the board began to respond. Moments later, they heard 3 distinct knocks coming from inside the wall. That's when the fear started to take root.
Should have been so good. Yeah, I ain't even surprised no more with these stories, but like, what?
More nights passed and more
bro?
things went wrong. Objects went missing. The TV would turn on in the middle of the night. Frank began to feel watched, but nothing prepared them for what came next. Frank came home one evening to complete chaos. The house was freezing cold despite the heat being on. Radios blared static. The television was on with no signal. He climbed the stairs and found something horrifying. Standing in the hallway was a teenage boy he didn't recognize. He wore a wig and wedding dress. His face was smeared with makeup. In his hand, he held a hatchet. It was Daniel LaPlante. He had been living in the walls of the Bowen house. He'd broken in months earlier after becoming obsessed with Tina. He'd installed peepholes to spy on her and her family. He moved around the walls and crawl spaces like a rat, coming out only when no one was looking. The noises, the missing items, and the feelings of being watched, it was all him. Frank was able to escape with his daughters and alert the police. When officers searched the house, they found Daniel hiding in a narrow wall cavity, crouched and silent. There were tunnels carved out behind the walls, complete with blankets, food wrappers, and peepholes. LaPlante was arrested, but later released on bail.
What?
Not long after, he broke into another home and brutally murdered a pregnant woman.
Y'all is lace, bro. This a real story? Oh, wait. Let's do our research, bro. Wall incident. House or whatever. Is y'all dead serious? Tina LaPlante inside it? Y'all is lace? Bro. This man's name is LaPlante. Yeah, kill it, kill it. Kill it in the walls. And he got released? Wait, August. Is he still alive? Bro, no, I'm just so in shock right now. Now, he killed multiple people they talking about on Wikipedia. Oh, Massachusetts is a state? Am I tripping? Wait, yo, I gotta do some research. It's a state. Oh, well, I'm glad I ain't nowhere near there on Shorty Gray. Y'all tweaking. Shoot. Man, good. Y'all, what is wrong with him? This just threw me off. Like, I mean, I know some of the stories be real because I've done my research on them, but, like, this is crazy.
He was later convicted and sentenced to life in prison.
Bro.
The Bowen family never returned to that house.
That's so laced.
Ohio State in 2013. A group of college students rented a house off campus near Ohio State University. It was an old place, but cheap, and 10 people shared it. Like most college rentals, it had quirks: bad wiring, flickering lights, and strange noises. No one thought much of it at first, but one tenant, Brett, started noticing odd things. Cabinets were left open. The fridge seemed emptier than it should be. Lights were turned on that no one remembered using. The basement had a door that was always locked, labeled as a utility closet. The landlord said not to worry about it. Then one night, Brett went down to reset the breaker after a power surge. When he turned the corner, he saw a man walking out of the basement. The man was barefoot and calm, like he belonged there. Brett froze and asked, "Who are you?" The man said his name was Jeremy and walked away. Brett and his roommates broke into the locked door. What they found was shocking. Inside was a small, makeshift room. A mattress, personal photos, books, a guitar. Jeremy had been living in there, undetected, for weeks, maybe even longer. He ate their food, used their bathroom, and moved quietly to avoid being found. Turns out, Jeremy had a copy of the house key from a previous tenant and had never officially left. He just started living in the basement after everyone thought he was gone. The police were called, but Jeremy didn't resist. He packed up and left. No charges were filed, but the roommates were deeply shaken. After that, no one felt safe in the house again. Not long after Jeremy left, another group of students moved into that same house. They'd heard stories, but assumed it was just an urban legend. Soon enough, they started to experience the same things: missing food, footsteps at night, doors left open. Eventually, one of the roommates ventured into the basement to investigate, and what he found was disturbing. Someone else had moved in, again. Another man, older this time, had quietly taken up residence in the dark corners of the basement. His name was Jared. Like Jeremy, he'd gotten a copy of the key and slipped in without being noticed. He wasn't hostile. In fact, he apologized and offered to leave. But the idea that he had been there, sleeping beneath them, listening and watching, it left the house in a state of paranoia. The house was never the same. The students started locking every door, adding cameras, and avoiding the basement altogether. They later learned that there was a term for this: frogging, when someone secretly lives in another person's home without them knowing. But for them, it wasn't a story or a concept. It was real, and it changed the rest of their living experience in the house.
Bro, I'm glad that he apologized, bro, but that's not cool. Like, y'all need to stop doing this, bro. Like, yeah, that's not cool, bro. Okay, I understand you might need somewhere to live, bro. Yeah, man. I'm doing a video right quick. But that's insane, bro. I lost my train of thought. Like, this is this is real life story. I'm baffled. Especially since some people be living in walls. That is crazy. That's so creepy. Oh, I was about to say, like, I'd rather somebody to ask me, like, can I live with you? I might say no, low key, but still, like, shoot. I don't know what I'd do if I just found some random person walking my house. Shoot. Man, good. Ohio. This is in Ohio. So I'm in Michigan. Heck no.
The house.
Heck no. Too close for comfort, chat. Too close.
This story was sent to me by a girl named Ashley. She lives alone in a small one-bedroom house outside Spokane, Washington. She moved in last winter. The place is old but charming, quiet street and decent size. Her friends warned her about living alone in a house that backed up to thick woods, but she liked the privacy. At first, everything was fine. She settled in, decorated, and worked from home as a freelance graphic designer. Weeks went by without incident until mid-February. It started small and unnoticeable, the kind of things you'd shrug off. A spoon in the sink when she swore she had cleaned it. Her shampoo bottle moved slightly, lights flickering once or twice. She thought maybe she was just tired, maybe she was slipping. Then she started hearing things. At night, while watching TV in bed, she'd hear soft tapping in the walls.
I ain't shrugging that junk off. Is you crazy? That's not even soft, gang.
It wasn't mice. It was slow and rhythmic, almost like knuckles. At first, she assumed it was old pipes or maybe the wood settling, but the tapping would happen after midnight, sometimes right after she turned off the TV, like it was waiting. A few nights later, she heard something new, scraping, coming from the air vent near the ceiling in her bedroom. It only lasted a second, and then silence. She stood on a chair and shined her phone flashlight into the vents, but saw nothing, just darkness. She didn't think much of it until one day, about 3 weeks after the noises started, when she woke up and found her back door wide open. No signs of forced entry or anything missing. The door was just wide open, like someone had left in a hurry, or entered quietly.
I would have left in a hurry.
She called the police, and they looked around and said the lock may have malfunctioned. They advised her to get a new one. She replaced all the locks that day, but something still felt wrong.
Bro, the police is not y'all superhero, bro. They get paid just how you doing their job, bro. They don't care that much, bro. They just want their paycheck. Most of the police be bored, bro. They be bored. Yes, you got some good cops, bro. Yes, bro. And I praise them, bro. I don't praise nobody but Jesus. I'm tripping. But I salute them, bro. Like, keep doing your thing, bro. You doing good at your job. But it's most of the other cops, no, bro. They don't. They just getting a paycheck, bro. They just want to mess with people that be bored, bro. Don't care. Be looking for something to do.
That night, as she was lying in bed, she heard the scraping again. Then footsteps. Not in the livable space of her house, but above her, in the crawl space between the ceiling and the roof.
Why is you still
It stopped
there,
as soon
man?
as she grabbed her phone. She didn't sleep that night, and the next morning, she climbed into the attic through the hallway panel. It was mostly insulation, dead bugs, and old boards. But in one far corner, she found something that didn't belong. A plastic water bottle, an empty granola wrapper, and the unmistakable shape of a rolled-up sleeping bag. Someone had been living up there. She bolted, called the police, and refused to go back in. This time, the officers did a full sweep, and they found him. The man was hiding inside the wall cavity behind her bedroom closet. He had built himself a narrow tunnel, accessed through a loose panel behind the furnace in the laundry room. There was a small camp light, bags of food, and a pile of clothes. They said it looked like he'd been there for weeks, at least a month.
That's crazy.
He had cut a small peephole through the drywall, covered by a vent grate. From there, he had a perfect view of her bed. He watched her sleep every night. They arrested him, but he had no ID and no explanation. Just some random drifter, likely homeless. But they think he had been watching her even before she moved in. There were scuff marks in the crawl space, like he'd been using it long before she noticed anything wrong. Ashley moved out that same week. The landlord tried to patch up the walls and make the place feel new again, but apparently no one wanted to rent it. The idea that someone could live just inches away from you in the walls, in the dark, is enough to make anyone's skin crawl. Ashley says according to the neighbors, a young couple moved into the house a few months later, and they quickly moved out within under a month. They never got an explanation why. As far as she knows, the house sits vacant today.
Do you have $100? Because I'm looking for 2,000 believers who are willing to trade one.
The case of Theodore Coneys in Denver, Colorado, 1941. Philip Peters was a 73-year-old retired railroad auditor who lived alone while his wife recovered in the hospital. He was known to be polite and quiet, a man of strict routines and old-world values. His home was a small Victorian structure built decades earlier with tight eaves and an attic space that most would consider uninhabitable. Peters had lived in that house for decades, and he knew its creaks, drafts, and shifting shadows. But what he didn't know was that someone else was learning those things too. Someone who had been living right above his head. Theodore Coneys, a local man in his early 60s, had once been acquainted with Peters. Desperately ill and homeless, Coneys decided to visit the home unannounced. Finding it empty, he let himself in. When he saw that the attic had a small crawl space barely large enough for a grown man to squeeze into, he made a decision that would define his life and also end another's.
What?
Coneys lived in the attic for weeks, maybe longer, without ever being seen. He crept down only when he was certain Peters was out, stealing small amounts of food, water, and newspapers. He left little evidence of his presence, except for odd creaks and faint footsteps Peters chalked up to the old bones of the house. But one night, everything changed. Peters came home early from a hospital visit and heard movement upstairs. Investigating, he climbed the staircase and was met by Coneys, who was emerging from the attic hatch. Startled and desperate, Coneys attacked Peter with an old iron stove shaker. He beat him to death and disappeared back into the attic. When police arrived, they were at a loss. There was no forced entry, no missing valuables. The doors were locked from the inside. They called it the Ghost House Murder. The case went cold for months. Meanwhile, Coneys stayed in the attic, living feet above the place he'd turned into a crime scene. Eventually, neighbors saw signs of movement in the supposedly abandoned home. The police were called again. When they heard a noise above, they climbed into the attic. There, in a cramped blackened crawl space, they found Coneys. He was filthy, emaciated, and seemed like he'd gone insane. He'd been living in the walls of that house for over 5 weeks after the murder, surviving off stored food and tap water, emerging only to pace and stare through the ventilation grates. He confessed on the spot. The press dubbed him the Denver Spider-Man, and he was sentenced to life in prison. The house was never occupied again.
These people don't deserve no nicknames, bro. What's like what? Don't ever try to glorify this BS. What's his name? What clothing use or something? That's like so odd. Okay, okay. What was he called? Theodore Coneys. What's that? D. Oh. Yeah, this is like older times. I'm glad this gen don't be. I hope this gen don't be happening no more. This is crazy, bro. That's so laced. That's crazy, dude. Like,
South Carolina, 2012. A woman living with her 5 children began to notice strange things around the house. She had just ended a long and rocky relationship with a man who had a history of erratic behavior, including multiple stints in jail. But she had moved on and tried to rebuild her life, focusing on her kids and her home. One night, as she lay in bed,
that joke was so not necessary. Like what, bro? Like that joke low-key
on her kids and her home. One night, as she lay in bed, she noticed something odd. Nails from the ceiling began to push downward. It looked as if someone were trying to remove them from above. She heard scratching and faint thumps, and what she thought was whispering. She dismissed it at first as stress or imagination, but then things escalated. Objects would move slightly from where they had been placed. Her food disappeared faster than it should. One morning, she woke to find insulation debris on her bed. Finally, she sent her nephew to investigate the attic. What he found shocked them all. Her ex-boyfriend was living up there. He had carved out a tiny makeshift living space beside the heating unit. He made a bed fashioned from coats and blankets, and he had been spying on her through a vent directly above her bed. There were plastic cups filled with urine and feces, indicating he hadn't left the attic for days. He admitted he had been up there for over 2 weeks. He came down, apologized, and calmly left before the police could arrest him. But the woman was traumatized, knowing that someone she once trusted had watched her and her children sleep mere feet above their heads. The woman stated she would be shaken for life.
That made no sense, bro.
In February of 2020, a man in Oklahoma City started to notice some small things around his home were out of place, like a cereal box was half empty when it should have been full. The back door was unlocked one morning. The thermostat was changed in the night. His first thought was a memory lapse, then maybe an animal or even a prank by a neighbor. But the disturbances continued, always subtle, but just enough to be unsettling. One day, he finally decided to investigate the attic. He expected to find a dead raccoon or maybe some birds. Instead, as he poked his head through the hatch, his flashlight landed on something horrifying. A mattress, a pile of clothing, and a man fast asleep. The intruder was in his 30s and looked unkempt and exhausted. The homeowner backed away and called the police, holding the man at gunpoint until they arrived.
Oh, bro,
Investigators later learned the intruder had climbed an exterior staircase and entered through an unused rear attic door. He had lived in the home for nearly a week without being noticed. He survived on pantry food, snuck into the bathroom while the homeowner was out, and returned to his hiding spot like a ghost each time. He had no connection to the homeowner and offered no clear motive beyond desperation. He was arrested and charged with unlawful entry. The homeowner, though unharmed, said the experience forever changed how he viewed his own house. He couldn't sleep in peace, knowing how close someone had been to him, completely undetected. Lisa Leichhardt lives alone in a small 1950s house just outside Portland, Oregon. She bought the home earlier this year after a breakup, eager to start fresh. It wasn't perfect. It creaked in the wind and the pipes groaned sometimes, but it was quiet and cozy. And it was just enough space for her and her dog. At first, she loved the solitude, but about 2 months in, something started to feel off. It began at night when she was in bed. She would hear very soft sounds, like breathing. Very muffled and low breathing, like someone with a heavy chest cold exhaling slowly through their nose. And the thing was, it always seemed to come from the same spot.
I know, I'm almost done.
The wall directly beside her bed. She even moved her nightstand to see if maybe it was a vent or something. There was nothing, just an old blank wall with faded paint and a strange little square panel about a foot wide, bolted shut near the baseboard. It didn't seem important, maybe an old utility hatch, but the breathing kept happening. And then came the other sounds. Late at night, usually between 2 and 4 a.m., she would hear quiet tapping, like fingers tapping on wood. One night, she was lying still, staring at the ceiling, when she heard a whisper. She couldn't make out the words, but it came from inside the wall. That was the first time she left the house in the middle of the night to stay at a friend's place. She told her friend about the noises, and her friend joked that it sounded like her house was haunted, but Lisa didn't think it was a ghost. It sounded too real. She started sleeping on the couch, and even then, some nights she thought she'd heard something faint, like someone crawling through insulation. After about a week of avoiding her bedroom, she finally decided she had to confront it. She took a crowbar to the small square panel on the wall. It came off easier than expected. As it turned out, the screws weren't even holding it in place, so it could have been removed with her bare hands. Behind it was a dark cavity. She turned on her phone flashlight and aimed it into the space. At first, she saw insulation and old wood. Then she noticed that the space actually opened up further. It wasn't just a hollow wall. It was a crawl space, roughly 3 feet wide, stretching back into darkness. She leaned closer. That's when she saw a man sitting in the far corner of the space. His knees were to his chest, and he was filthy, pale, and his eyes wide and locked on hers. He didn't move or speak. All he did was stare back at her like he had been waiting for her. She screamed, dropped her phone, and ran.
No game.
The man didn't come out, but when the police arrived, they searched the crawlspace area, and he was gone. Inside, they found evidence he'd been living there for weeks. A sleeping bag, plastic bottles filled with urine, food wrappers, and drawings, hundreds of them, scrawled onto the wood and insulation with pencil and charcoal. Most of them were of a woman, likely Lisa. The man had accessed the crawlspace through a forgotten storage hatch in the basement utility closet. It led up behind the walls of her bedroom, directly to the spot where the breathing had come from. He'd likely been watching her, listening to her sleep. The police never caught him. They said he might have been homeless, or maybe something worse. Someone who had picked her at random, someone who knew to stay hidden. Lisa moved out immediately. She's still in therapy, and she hasn't lived alone ever since this incident.
I can't believe these stories is real, bro. That's just like I just wasn't ready for it, y'all. I can't lie to you. I was not ready, bro. Oh, bro, they released him. He had a weapon. It was fine. Why did you release him? Yeah, bro, that jack was low-key slow. Oh, bro. Man, I don't got too much to say, bro. All glory to God, bro. I would have been killing people if I was in these three. Y'all crazy. If I saw it, bro. Y'all laced, bro. I ain't got too much to say, bro. All glory to God. Shoot. I can't believe this junk was real. Like, this is crazy. Like, most of them was older times, but dang. Man, I hope y'all have a good day or good night whenever y'all watching this, man. Stay blessed, man. Stay blessed. Stay safe. Keep Emmanuel, God with us, man. We out.